One of the most common inquiries that I ever receive as a spiritual teacher and a Kundalini awakening guide are of an imbalanced Kundalini, are that we're going through a Kundalini awakening or going through a spiritual awakening, but you feel attacked. You feel as though your organism has contained so much fear and continues to accumulate fear, so that you're almost feeling that you're having psychotic episodes. You suddenly feel like vomiting. You feel like spewing things that you hadn't even known existed inside of you because you weren't even aware of this. Now, why is it for some of us, a Kundalini awakening can be one of the most jarring experiences? A Kundalini awakening, so if you've found me here, chances are you already know what a Kundalini awakening is. So when you awaken a 10,000 voltage in a body that can only contain 3, that is the kind of voltage that you're suddenly getting access to. Except you're not really used to that. So this is like you moving from a charter flight to a rocket without being prepared. It's like you suddenly going into space without being prepared for it, without knowing what to expect, and you're suddenly thrust in this rocket that is on fire and it goes at such a speed. It's like you sitting in a car for the very, very first time, and not only is it going at a pace that is completely alien to you, but it is the sounds that you're suddenly becoming aware of. It's other people, and it's the interruptions, the hazards you've got to be aware of as you're in this high speed, high velocity car. Now, you're in this, and guess what? You have no control over the speed because you don't know. You don't even know that you're in a vehicle that can be stopped. It feels as if something has taken over you. This is why so many who go through a Kundalini awakening, who are not aware of the Kundalini awakening, will experience it as something very negative, as something very scary. And it is for this reason, because it is something that is so away from our present consciousness. It is something that isn't part of an education system. It isn't part of a curriculum. It isn't part of medicine. It isn't part of normal life day to day. You don't hear your parents talking about it. You don't hear of people talking about it very casually, about out-of-body experiences, astral projection. These are things that aren't very normal. If you're going to small talk about something, you might talk about the weather, you might talk about some news that you've heard about, but very rarely are you going to talk about, I was out of my body the other day, or I ended up somewhere else, or I feel so attacked by something that isn't me, or it's an entity that's outside of me. Now, folks, we just did a post on negative entities and the astral plane. When you suddenly have this Kundalini awakening, what also comes with this is a sudden opening of portals that you weren't aware of, timelines that you weren't aware of. Suddenly things that couldn't be seen by the naked eye are suddenly in front of you. Like ghosts, spirits, we've heard of them. Some of us feel they don't exist, some of us feel they do. Like aliens, anything that is not the norm for us as humans. Now, you ask yourself, why is all of this happening? Now, this is usually for those of you who have had a spontaneous. For those of you who've been preparing for this, notwithstanding that you've been preparing for this, the irony is that nothing can really prepare you for this, not even your guru, unless your guru is a guru who has already gone through this experience and knows this side of things, and you can sort of, you have access to them, or that it's set up in such a way that even if you didn't have physical access to them, you're able to get your answers. It's a bit like following a guru or a teacher that is not physically incarnate. So you have a guru that's on another plane or another dimension, but you have access to them. And how you have access to them is through extrasensory perception. So you're not really talking or physically communicating with them, although it might appear that you are, but that you just have these answers. Now, whether that is really the guru that's outside of you and the guru that you're following, or whether that is actually your own voice, your higher self, and whether at the end, that sort of supra-consciousness is the consciousness that underpins the entire existence. And if it's that we are now having access to. So imagine having access to the very seed of existence, not our physical reality, not the reality that we're experiencing day to day, with our senses, no, but actually everything, the cosmos, everything, the universe, things start to just drop and you start to experience these things. Now, without any knowledge, without any spiritual awakening, when you do just have a Kundalini awakening, and it's very, very jarring, for some of us, we suddenly start to experience dreams, or we see monsters, we see figures that are very scary. Apart from us seeing these things, which sometimes what we're actually sensing could be an image that the brain is trying to put together to represent how you're really feeling at that point, to try to give a picture to what you're perceiving. Although what you're perceiving may not exactly be that picture, but to paint the picture in words, to paint the perception into an image, or to write it out. You can even do this is why we say automatic writing. You're trying to give language, right? The language could be through art, anything free form that is flowing. So your brain will try to make sense of it by representing these images. Now, these images, we can say that on one hand, they can be very, very real and very, very frightening. On the other hand, they can be what are our not really imagination. They are there in the sense that you've not really imagined it. It's there, but your brain has simply made sense of what you have perceived. Now, how your brain is going to make sense of what you have perceived is either going to be based on history or your memory bank, to what picture you would have given to that kind of a perception from now, so from this life, or from however many lives or parallel dimensions and planes that you have already accumulated the experience of in your bank of consciousness. So there will be that image. It could even be that when you had this sort of sudden awakening, because generally folks, those of you who do experience this awakening are people who've already been awakened at some point before now. So you go back and you might have found that you have gone through this sort of experience, and so your brain will just fetch from the field of consciousness whatever it can to match that which you're perceiving. And that which you're perceiving as something quite novel and quite scary is sometimes not so novel. It's just your brain's rep, It's just the way that your brain is interpreting and based on a memory. And sometimes, rather than being based on a memory, it might be trying to create or make sense of what you are perceiving. Because we are unprepared and it is scary, it comes as fear. For some of us, when our Muladhara or our lower chakras are quite out of balance, or we've experienced trauma, or we've experienced very high levels of fear, you will more than likely perceive that as something that is fearful. Even if it is something that is not fearful, it is a phenomena that is unknown but wants to become known to you because you come from that. So just imagine you suddenly being bombarded with all of this, and what you've ever known, though you may have felt experiences in dreams, had visions, had, for some of you, visitations even from other beings, or you may have felt that you can connect to life beyond life as we know it. For some of you, you will have this extrasensory perception already you will be able to feel all of these things, but it won't make any sense to you. And then you have this thunderbolt jolt of a Kundalini awakening. So what do you do? The only criteria for you to move a Kundalini awakening into a Kundalini rising is to literally let it be. Is for you to allow the process to unfold itself, because remember, that which created you knows how to do what it needs to do. Yeah, we can't teach that which created us, and it's a fallacy if we believe that we can, because that which is life-giving, or that which is the very core of our existence, the only feeling or the reason that we will feel that we can ride it or we can tell it what to do is our mind. And our mind is just going to give us a picture, and it's the thought. So the minute you kind of change that, you change the setup, you change your, you can call it the Merudanda, which is a stick, or your middle channel. The minute you start to change your physicality, so the way that your chakras are, and it'll then translate into your health, your well-being, and all of that. Yet, when you go through, for the very first time, in as much as you're aware of it being your first time, going through this spontaneous Kundalini awakening, this sudden injection of fear comes because you're being opened to a world that was either unknown to you, or it was known to you, but you never ever allowed it to flow through you because you were too scared. Yeah, too scared for whatever reason. That fear can come from a previous encounter. The fear can come because it would mean an absolute upheaval of life the way you know it, and life the way you know it would be so comfortable. Or even if folks, the funny thing is that even when our life is challenging us and we have a bit of suffering and things aren't really, hunky-dory, even that becomes a familiar way of being, which is why you'll see trauma attracts trauma. Negative thought patterns attack negative thought patterns. So it'll be the same thing that keeps repeating itself. And some of this is because we become so familiar with it, which is why a lot of people who know they're in toxic relationships, they know no better. So they'd rather stay in a relationship that is pretty toxic and abusive, than actually venture out there and, romance with the possibility that actually someone can be that normal and love them without this burden or this toxicity. But that's the topic for another day. So folks, it is that fear of the unknown. But apart from the fear of this unknown, it's that jolt of energy. That energy really throws you back. Now, I don't know how many of you have been through a roller coaster, and I mean a physical one. So if you go to a theme park and you have these rides. Some time ago, my little one, we took him to Disneyland. And while we were there, unbeknownst to me, I sort of didn't even check what ride this was, and we just followed the trail and we went to the next ride and the next ride, and we ended up going onto this ride. Now, I don't like very sort of adrenaline pumping sort of rides. So we sat in this thing and it started, and then there was this big jolt, and you get into this dark tunnel and your body gets shaken up, and we were all screaming. And I thought, goodness me, why we become adrenaline junkies, or why we like that, I don't know. But your Kundalini awakening is a bit like that. So something that you were totally unprepared for, you sort of get into this, and you'll find that when you are in this, the minute you try to relax in it, it won't feel as fearful. The first couple of seconds, it may still surprise you that as soon as you relax, and then there's another jolt, yeah? But it won't surprise you as much, and you'll sort of be able to get through with it. And that is what the Kundalini awakening does. Now, the Kundalini awakening, when it gets stuck in certain places, or we are stuck in certain places because there's resistance, there's overwhelm, we can't deal with this, or when we feel that we are now taken over by dark forces or negative entities. And you know, that being taken over or being colonized by these sort of dark entities is usually when there is a very, very big, you know, it is quite a significant, rather not big, but a significant one, an imbalance inside of us. And that imbalance, folks, is generally at a very low chakra. It could even be in a higher chakra where, for example, say you could have been a spiritual teacher, you could have been quite an advanced practitioner in another life, but you might have misused your power. There have been times when you have that wisdom, but you are not sharing it and you're keeping it to yourself because for whatever reason you may not feel confident in the wisdom that comes to you, and so you don't want to go and put yourself out there. And remember, even the fact that we don't feel confident enough to put that wisdom out there, whatever it is, whether you're channeling or whether it's just coming to you, again, it is based on fear, that our fear of validation, not being accepted, being rejected, being judged, and all of those things. So again, it'll point back to that imbalance. And if it's a fear because you feel that you are not, you know, that you are worried that you might fall into a trap of self-aggrandisement, because that is also another fear, folks, for teachers. You feel, well, you know, how can I call myself a spiritual teacher? How can I come into this? You know, this is for those of you who've got your crown chakra open, you know, you're going through these wonderful experiences, but you don't feel that it is in your place to go and share or to go and teach as well, because you don't feel that you are anything. Yeah, you don't feel that you are worthy of that. And again, folks, that is also again another block in us, because it isn't about whether you're worthy or not. You just follow that which comes naturally to you. You follow your bliss and you follow that which brings wholeness to you and everything around you. So when you're going through this spontaneous Kundalini awakening and you're experiencing these sort of negative entities, or shall we say, for want of a better word, an experience that you're having that makes you feel like you're being colonized, it makes you feel that you're being taken over without you, you know, you're not consenting to this, but you are being taken over by something that's not you. For some of you, you may feel that I want to find a way of shutting Kundalini down. How do I shut this thing down? I never even asked for it. And folks, I was one of those people. Yeah, I was one of those people that never really wanted to accept any of these things, and I stayed to myself for a very long time. I didn't feel that I wanted to share anything with anybody. I just felt, you know, that this is it, and I never really felt that it was anything significant. I never really thought much about it, yet it was enough to disrupt our entire life. Anyway, so you have this experience and you think, right, you know, what next? So here's the thing, folks, even when you're going through your Kundalini awakening, for you to try to simply focus on now, bar the present, or sorry, bar the future or the past, that too will bring you into alignment with knowing what is expected. So one of the things that happens during a Kundalini awakening and a spiritual awakening is that because suddenly a plane that is unseen, a dimension that is unseen, unheard, something that we wouldn't necessarily experience with our naked eye, although some can, suddenly becomes very real to you, and you can sort of dip in and out of these places. And you dip in and out of this. This is one of the reasons why so many people who experience a Kundalini awakening are very ungrounded, or will feel really taken over, and you know, they'll want to disappear from the world in a cave and doing other things. And you know, for some, it's sort of, you just go onto this path completely ignoring another part of you. And the trouble with that is, at some point or the other, maybe not even in this present life, but at some point or the other on this sort of continuum of existence, you will come back to that point, because we cannot move without going through all of us and going through all of us and going through the organism of us is to go through our blueprint. The reason for our blueprint is to unravel our present consciousness. It's to get to know our present consciousness and then to move to whatever level of consciousness it is that you want to experience, folks. There is a consciousness that we experience as our gross physical reality. There is then the consciousness that we experience as the astral, the subtle, the causal. So there's 4 levels of consciousness, folks, that we experience, which is a post for another day. I would love to hear your experiences with Kundalini awakening, especially for those of you who have a spontaneous one, would want to shut it down or want to know how to take this forward. Sending you so much love as always.